Hey, Billy, you know what's awesome, man?
What's that, man?
Christmas holiday TV specials.
Most of the time, you're right. Dude, I used to live for those.
Oh,
Remember,
yeah.
like for the uninitiated out there, or for probably for the initiated. Back in the day, TV was like three or four channels. Like living in Houston, we had three major TV stations, so ABC, NBC, CBS, and we had the UHF, which is an entire movie, the ultra high frequency. So we had 26 and 39, 20, 26 and 39. And those were the CW, what is, that kind of upper end of the dial. And then you'd flip higher, and then every now and then you'd find like an AM radio station broadcasting, or like it would be in Spanish or Japanese or something. It's like the TV back in the day was just like a radio dial. You flip it, and sometimes it would work, and sometimes it wouldn't. But
Yeah.
most of the time, you had your shows, and then every now and then you'd hear that little dun 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 dun.
Yep.
Like, oh yeah, it's Christmas time. It's on.
Uh, but yeah, man, it's amazing how now you kind of see them and they're on TV and it's just kind of a passing thing. But so many of these shows where the world stopped so you could watch Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And like you said, it wasn't, you didn't have, even at that point, you didn't even have really, in my time, VHS or any of that stuff till, a little later on. And you sure weren't going to get Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer on VHS.
Well, and even if you did, you weren't gonna watch it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, unless your parents were like, "Hey, it's movie night. Here's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer," but nobody was gonna throw that. Like, even if it was available,
Yeah.
that wasn't how that worked.
Yeah. And it's easy access now because you can pull it off your shelf or just go to YouTube and watch the thing or whatever. But back in the day, it was a spectacle. It was just as Christmassy as Christmas morning.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they didn't play it multiple times
Right.
either.
Yeah.
Uh, again, Christmas now is a couple of months. It starts
Yeah.
about a week before Halloween, and then it just you go to the store. But it didn't really used to be that way. Like Christmas was Christmas. You had December, and so as a kid, even as a little kid, you had letters to Santa, and I realized that as a kid, time moves slower than as a grown up. So it might have been, but you weren't 6 weeks out. You weren't 8 weeks out
Right.
from the big day. You were probably like 2 to 3 weeks out, and they started playing these Christmas specials, moving
Yeah.
into the time. So when they played that show, that was the year that, like, that was your one time to catch it in the year.
That's it.
Because they didn't replay these things over and over and over again like they do now.
Right.
It was like, well, Frosty's on.
Yeah.
You want to watch it this year? Then take a bath. Like, well, crap, I guess I'm taking a bath. So,
And of course, all of your, of course, I grew up in the time of, Donnie and Marie Osmond and Sonny and Cher. They all had these TV shows, and they would do Christmas specials as well. And even that was a special event, just to to see TV shows that were kind of catering to that at the time. And it's just, it was such a part of the celebration. And like you said, it was 2 or 3 weeks leading into it, which from kids' logic, I mean, we look at it now, we go, man, 2 or 3 weeks, we're 3 weeks away from the week of Christmas right now. It's just like, holy smokes, Well, I wasn't supposed to say that because we're actually, when the show comes out, it'll be a little later than that.
right.
But
it's okay. We always say it on Scary Dad. We're time travelers.
Right,
We're
time
talking
travelers.
about stuff that happened like weeks ago.
But you got to remember kid logic too, because a day when you're 8 years old is a week to us now.
Hmm. Especially when there was a Christmas tree full
Oh
of
yeah.
presents,
Oh
and
yeah.
you'd shake them. You'd shake those presents, and you'd think, okay, like for me, like I'm always, optimist, pessimist, somewhere in between. Like you shake it, and it's like it could be the
You're right.
GI Joe jet.
Yeah.
It could, it could also be not that.
Right.
Like it could be clothes. Like my mom bought me a new Sunday best suit. Like that would not be fun. But it's just like my mom to put it in a big old box like that, right?
Oh
So
man, yeah. The
man,
whole
the time
idea
the
of,
time goes so slow
the whole idea
when
of
when
giving your kids stuff that they actually need versus what they want. Who come up with that philosophy? Great, I can use another pair of jeans.
man, this tells you how spoiled, like spoiled kid, but just spoiled mentality. I'm gonna read these stories about, Christmas, like the original Christmas, Saint Nicholas
Yeah.
that's, drag. He didn't have reindeer. He's dragging his sleigh and like going through the cold to deliver like apples to children or put oranges in their shoes. And I'm like,
Hmm.
you wake up Christmas morning and you have an orange in your shoe? that does not sound like a good Christmas morning to me.
Heck, I thought it sucked that he just had an orange in my stocking.
Right? Like, well,
Man, that's room.
not to realize.
That's room. You could have had a Snicker bar in there, but no, you gave me an
Exactly.
orange. You got a whole bag of those in the kitchen. I don't need another orange. What were you thinking, Santa? Oh, so yeah,
So
man.
yeah, man. When
Oh, go
when
ahead.
when the when that special, and I'm gonna cut that in a few minutes ago
Yeah.
whenever I first mentioned it. But for me, there was that swirling,
Oh yeah.
dun 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 dun
Doo-doo-doo.
dun.
Yep.
And then
Special.
on the news, they'd actually say that your shows are not going to be seen tonight, so we can bring you a very special presentation.
Yeah.
So whatever happened to be on, like the Love Boat, will not be seen tonight, so we can bring you Frosty the Snowman or Rudolph or whatever. But as a kid, that little dun dun dun
Oh
dun
yeah.
dun, like you remember that old advertisement for Memorex where the dude's sitting in the chair and he's
Absolutely.
listening to the tape and it's like blowing his brains out the back of his head.
Yeah.
That's what that little special thing was for me. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's Christmas special time.
Right.
Like,
Y'all shut
in the
up. This
bath.
is for me specifically.
Uh-huh. And the parents were not impressed. The parents were just like washing dishes, talking on the phone to the aunt, and
Yeah.
like, "How was your day, honey?" You're like,
Burl Lives is talking. Oh. Yeah, and what's funny is, silly us, our parents grew up watching these too. I mean,
"Oh yeah,
these were old, you know.
yeah, they were."
But again, because you only saw them once a year, you didn't get tired of them, and you know, yeah. I mean, it's funny because just 2 nights ago we actually watched one. We'll talk about it in a minute. But yeah, man, there's still something that just brings out the kid in you when you sit and watch these, because I remember as a kid just watching these, not only because it was Christmas time and it was this special for kids or whatever, but trying to figure out how they made this show, because you could
Hmm.
see wires for puppets. You could see, you knew it was, you didn't know what stop motion really was as a kid. You just knew it was something different. It's
Hmm.
not a cartoon, but it's not real either. You couldn't really figure it out.
And I think that's one of those things, like the analytical mind versus maybe the empathetic mind. But we talked about Jim Henson a couple episodes ago,
Hmm.
and how like whenever I'd see the bars sticking into the bottom of the
Yeah.
puppet's hands, like as a kid, I'd wonder if that hurt. Like I like they were real to me,
Right.
and I mean I'm not trying to be weird or horror
Right.
thoughts, but just like, okay, so dude's got a stick hanging out the bottom of his arm. What's up with that? Like that can't feel good. because what they were doing with those sticks was so realistic that it brought the character to life.
Yeah.
And so again, I'd see strings, or I'd see that smoke and mirrors would fall away for a second. You'd see the man behind the curtain. For me, it's always been keep that curtain closed. I really don't want to see. I'd rather have the wonder.
Yep.
I'd rather not know. Years and years ago, I worked with a guy, and I've probably told this story 1,000 times, maybe not on this show, but I worked with a guy who was a sleight of hand magician. He was an amazing sleight of hand magician. He could do coin tricks and rubber bands, and he could do all kinds of really cool stuff right in front of you.
Yeah.
Like no curtains, no smoke, no mirrors, no hats, just with his hands, a coin or a rubber band, and he would just do things that would just blow your mind. And I would be like, oh, man, show me how to do that. And he'd tell me, he's like, well, you play guitar, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, how much do you practice? I was like, a lot. He goes, you have to practice this a lot in order, like, the trick is simple, but once it's revealed, you're never going to be able to see the magic in it. So unless you're going to become a magician and practice it and make it, all you're doing is ruining it for yourself.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool. Then I accept that explanation, and I will just continue to be amazed because I didn't want to lose that little piece of the magic. I'd just rather be like, whoa.
Yep. And that goes along with these shows too, man. Like you said, it was a magic because you watch these in just complete awe as a kid because, again, it was foreign. I mean, because you didn't really have a lot of shows that had stop motion in it. But it kind of ruins it when you find out that how it was done,
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good analogy on that. I like that.
Well, like what's on your list? Like, what was your favorite one? Like, what's the one you look forward to whenever you heard that little specials coming up?
I mean,
it's Tuesday night.
Yeah,
it's time.
I don't. Obviously, we already talked about this on the Jim Henson episode, but my favorite Christmas show, bar none, even over a Christmas Vacation, I love Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, which is legit puppets.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really come on TV. I saw it on HBO. But for me, that's the one. Now, all of you that check out the You Know What's Awesome Facebook page and stuff, you've seen where I put clips of some of the songs and stuff from that special on there. I don't know, man. That one's just near and dear to me, man. I've always appreciated that movie because, it's not really about Santa. It's not about, it's about people struggling to make it through Christmas.
And giving.
Absolutely.
Yeah, giving to be together.
Yep. And then a kick-butt rock band.
Of course.
Oh, but yeah, man, that's my favorite.
Yeah. We mentioned it before. Like, I remember that. I don't know that it was ever on TV. It might have been maybe too long or something, but it was definitely on HBO.
Yeah.
It was certainly alongside like Fraggle Rock in that time period. But like Jim Henson and crew, because it's not just him.
Right.
He surrounded himself with wonderful people.
Yeah, he did.
But just like with the sticks coming out of the arms, but their attention to detail and their ability to really draw the heart and soul out of these characters and make it real.
Yep. And
just like you say, the Emmett Otter is more or less the gift of the Magi. That's the story.
Yeah, right.
He's trying to buy his mom but he ends up putting a hole in the wash tub so that. Right. But that's how she makes her money, and then it just. She
sells the tool chest in order to try to get the guitar for him, and so yeah.
So it's a sweet but classic gift of the Magi story, but I mean you've got these essentially stuffed toys, that are just being shaken around by sticks and strings, and it affects you for your entire life. Yeah. I mean, it's a puppet show, but it matters.
Yeah.
And dude, I'm right there with you. Yeah. Like Yeah, I always loved the jug band. I always felt he got so gypped. Although, like as a grown up, you're like, I can totally see why he didn't win. Like the
I mean,
the other band was.
it's just the fact that it's not necessarily that they went up against the rock band. It's the fact that that dude came out with the banjo with the handlebar mustache and sang their song before they got a chance to do it. That's what ruined the whole thing.
The funny thing is, like the people writing that have to be like, man, that guy just came out and did my act. Like, I'm just like, I'm writing this into the story, like this, because that happens.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
As a guitar player, you know that like every now and then you're like, well, I was talking to you. I was talking to you. Man, I've been playing guitar. I've been playing my ass off. My fingers are like shredded up and bleeding.
Yeah.
I've been playing Hendrix and Floyd, and you're like, I've been playing Doc, and I'm like, jeez. Like, okay, well, and also thanks because guitar is not your first instrument, so like that's like, well, there you go.
I didn't say I was playing it good. I mean, we're talking about George Lynch here, so.
Right. Yeah.
It's funny you bring that up because I'm like, okay, we're getting way off the Christmas thing, but I have a guy at work that's a huge Dokken fan, and one year for Christmas, I made him a picture of a Christmas tree, and I took a picture of Dokken. I made him a sign for Christmas that said "Dokken around the Christmas tree." Oh. But people didn't tune in to hear that. They tuned in to hearing what kind of Christmas specials we like to watch.
All right. Well,
what you got, Billy?
The stop motion, the Frosty and the Rudolph, as a kid, I sat there and watched them just completely entranced. The Island of Misfit Toys and all that.
Yeah.
And they're good. But like we mentioned at the beginning, like at some point I ended up with a DVD of these, and I was trying to show my kids, and my kids were not interested. And it's weird because I kind of also wasn't.
Yeah.
Like the story's a little bit overlong. It without the commercial breaks and kind of the Christmas vibe that goes with everything. Like Misfit Toys is sad.
Yeah, it is.
Dude it's not an uplifting story.
It's messed up.
Kind of like dude gets his butt kicked a lot and then gets kicked out of town, and then has to fight his way back among all of the other like broken toys. It's just like this is, and believe me, I'm all about like some tough love and like. Go outside and get your blood running and stuff. But man, that's a sad story.
Yeah.
Frosty the Snowman, same thing. I mean, it's a good story, but it's not just like doesn't heart bubble me like it used to when I was a kid.
Well, sure, yeah. Well, these things were made in a time period where kids actually had an attention span too. I mean,
that's true.
And now it's like. They're talking too much, so I'm not interested. I mean, it really has gotten to that, and I'm not saying the old days are better. It was just a different generation, and we were the tail end of that.
Yeah.
But it, like again, it just signified that time of year when these things came on. I'll be honest with you, I almost said Rudolph is my favorite because I do love that one as well because of. The Abominable Snowman, Yukon Cornelius. I mean,
well, that one. I mean, there's the Island of Misfit Toys, and then there's the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. There's two different ones. One of them, they just browbeat this poor kid into the dirt.
Oh yeah,
and you're just like.
And you had the elf that wanted to be a dentist.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's the Island of Misfit Toys. Yeah.
But yeah, man, the Abominable Snowman, which now could be played by Vince Neil.
Really good. Oh man.
I've never showed you that picture. I have to send you a picture, man. I've got one where
Dude,
they're side by side.
you didn't need to. You said it, and I had to think for a second. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, you think of how he looks here lately, man. I mean, he looks just like Abominable Snowman.
That's awesome. Okay, I know, like, I'm not a big fan of the Jim Carrey movies. I'm like the,
Yeah,
but how the Grinch Stole Christmas is still
yeah.
good.
Oh yeah.
In the internet age, when people are trying to psychologically analyze the Grinch and be like, oh well, it's this. No, it's a Dr. Seuss story.
Yeah.
It's not that long. It doesn't, it's all about just being happy and giving and understanding that it's not about you and in the world. But man, my mom will tell me, if my mom was in here on this microphone right now, she'd be like, Billy used to cry whenever he would spank that dog. Like when he'd whip the dog, like he'd tie the little reindeer the stick to his head.
Yeah.
Like, dude, when I was a kid, that just drove me nuts.
Sure.
Like if you,
Yeah.
that dog's not big enough to pull your sleigh. If you need it, just cut the dog loose and just push it and hop back on and roll it down like a sled.
And just the fact of when he gets everything pounded, and you're expecting this little dog to pull the sled. Yeah, it's Dr. Seuss doing the Scrooge in a strange kind of way, right? I mean, the Scrooge is the legendary story as well, and it's just kind of his weird take on what that can turn into. And of course, it kind of ends just like Scrooge as well, presents for everybody.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas. So
again, special place in my heart
Yeah.
because my little one, who is about almost 10,
Wow.
which I'm still, and if you've got a grown one with grandchildren,
Yeah.
When you see your daughter, either faces she makes, certain things that happen, you're looking at her and you're like, you just see her as like a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old or a 12-year-old. Like, just certain things that just knock you back. And it was a Christmas Eve. I was sitting around reading. I wasn't, it was before phone scrolling, so I was probably reading a book or, reading a newspaper or a magazine or something. And it was Christmas Eve, and she came in just like this big, with a little curl in the front of her head, and she's like, Daddy, I'm thirsty. And dude, it was like the Grinch, where it's just like, oh. And her name's Juliet.
Yeah.
And her middle name's Louise. So I call her Julie Lou Who. I'm like, oh, little Julie Lou Who, let me get you a glass of water. And she's like, what are you doing? Like looking around, trying to wake herself up. I'm like, nope. Shut yourself down. We're gonna pick you up, put you in bed because
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's one memory that for me anyway that I have completely just tied in with the Grinch, and we'll talk about it next week on Christmas memories of just like taking this sleepy child in her little nightgown and picking her up, putting her in bed, and being like, nope, yeah. I'm totally not throwing the Christmas tree up the chimney. Don't look at that. but yeah. So yeah, the Grinch. The Grinch. I don't like the movies as but the show.
Yeah.
Holds up to me.
Yeah, it's classic. It's classic. I mean, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. The one we watched the other night, which is not as popular, but it's Nestor. You remember Nestor, the donkey? So came out. Yeah, Roger Miller did the narration for it and did the songs.
Okay.
And it's about a little donkey had extra long ears, and everybody laughed at him. It's just like the Rudolph story. Nobody would play with him, and he would trip over his ears all this time, and his mama took care of him. Well, this guy that owns him, claims that he's good for nothing. Well, these Roman soldiers come in needing some animals, and he tries to sell them the donkey
My daughter watched that on Netflix a
Yeah,
while, like last year probably.
yeah. And he
I
ends
know.
up he kicks the donkey out on his own. Then the mama breaks out and goes protects him, and she dies out in the wilderness, hovering over him. She dies from the freezing cold, and he's on his own. And my wife's like, as soon as I said, "Hey, you want to watch Nestor?" She said, "No, that'll make me cry." But he ends up being the donkey that gets picked to carry Mary, to Bethlehem, and that's kind of the story around all of it. So even though
I think I had the same response to your wife. My kid was watching. I was like, "Dude, what are you watching? This is the saddest show
yeah,
ever."
it is. I mean, it's heartbreaking, but it's it's the black swan, right? I mean, it's the ugly duckling story,
Mm-hmm.
and Rudolph's the same thing, right? You got this abnormality, but ends up being your gift, and same thing with Nestor. He was able to hear things out in the wilderness, and there was a big sandstorm blowing, and they couldn't see where they were going, but he could hear, the right direction to go. So he was part bat, I guess. I don't know.
So there are several versions of it, but my one of my favorite was Mickey's Christmas Carol.
Oh yeah,
The one from the 80s where Uncle Scrooge is Ebenezer Scrooge. There are others where it's a different whole situation or whatever, but this is the one where you have Uncle Scrooge is Ebenezer and Mickey is Bob Cratchit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Donald is completely out of character for himself because he's the one that shows up like all in happy mood, like it's Christmas, and Uncle Scrooge kicks him out and stuff. But it is a really, really good rendition of the story, and I've always loved it. And that's one of those that actually did, I think, play more than once or twice on basic cable. You could see it on TBS or something. And I remember watching that a lot when I was a kid and being like, this is awesome. I love that old Disney animation, especially from the late 70s to the late 80s, where yes, they reused a lot of footage.
Yeah.
But then if you ever saw what it took for them to make a second of footage,
right?
If they had a few seconds to string together and they could just color things over and I'm okay with that. Yeah. Because that's hard. What do you expect? That's why they invented people don't think they invented computers for X, Y, and Z. No, they invented computers to make animation and video easier because it was hard and expensive.
Yep.
So, but yeah, Mickey's Christmas Carol is for me always going to be one of the.
It's a great one.
I have to watch it at least once, probably 2 or 3 times during the holiday season. And holiday season for me starts, again, about a week before Halloween. So
I usually try to hold off till Thanksgiving, and then it's like, all right, it's on, right?
Yep.
But speaking of animation, and you brought it up a while ago, but, Frosty the Snowman is a surprise in a way. When you look at it and you see what year it was made, you go, you know what? This animation for that time period is pretty dang good.
Mm-hmm.
Being that it wasn't Disney. I mean, you couldn't compare it to Disney, but still, for a 30-minute long, animated thing is pretty good. Now, the other side of that is in the 90s when they decided to make the return of Frosty the Snowman.
Uh-huh.
Man, it looks like Mike Judge made this thing. I mean, it was on the other night, and I was like, these songs are terrible. This artwork is terrible. I mean, you got John Goodman as the voice of the snowman, but that's about the only good quality it had. It's terrible.
Well, I think that's what you said at the beginning of the show was, maybe in the late '70s and early '80s, maybe we were getting a little bit jaded to the show, but that show, like, our parents had watched the show.
Right.
Our parents had, like, it had been around for a long time.
Yeah, it's tradition.
And
Yeah.
and if you say, like, well, as a if you're rolling tape, if you're rolling film, and you're like, well, this thing has been around for 30 years. It's like, well, it's only been played 23 times.
Right.
It's just kind of,
Yeah.
so, but yeah, then things started getting easier on the production side, and I think a lot of the creativity, because if you were going to work on Frosty the Snowman, the original one, if you're being hired to work on that, you're probably being hired to work on that 3 years before it's supposed to come out.
Sure.
For a 30-minute episode, like voice acting, all of the elements have to go in, and then in the '90s, that's like, dude, we're going to produce this show. You and I are going to talk for an hour. We're going to cut. I'm going to spend another hour in post-production, and then it is out in the world.
Yeah.
Like, back in the day, unless we were live, that was impossible.
Right.
So, I mean, the world has made it a lot easier.
Yeah.
So, but real quick, I want to take a break so we can listen to some of these old trailers. This is actually going to be a long break because it's Christmas time, and I'm going to just drop in as many as I can. So, enjoy.
On Sunday, December 4th, Burl Ives again tells the exciting news story of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer on the General Electric Fantasy Hour. The date, Sunday, December 4th. Join Rudolph in a trip to the island of misfit toys. Meet Yukon Cornelius, the funniest prospector of the North.
Gadzooks, the Bumble Snow Monster of the North strikes again.
Meet Santa's elves and hear 7 original Christmas songs. Burl sings,
Have a holly jolly Christmas. It's the best time of the year. I don't know if there'll be snow, but have a cup of cheer.
It's a holly jolly Christmas special for the entire family. Don't miss Rudolph, Sunday, December 4th, in color on most of these stations.
Thanks a lot. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Everyone's asleep.
I know how to wake them up. Come on.
How you doing,
Best wishes for this and all your mornings from Folgers.
Hi, all. This is Kermit the Frog, and I'm here to tell you the story about Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas.
Monday at 8, 7 Central, a special holiday treat for the whole family when Jim Henson's Marvelous Muppets bring Christmas to Frogtown Hollow in Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas.
Tonight.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that, man, because if that didn't get you in the Christmas mood, I really don't know what will. So you were mentioning Frosty. You were mentioning how much the sequels suck, which, I mean, sometimes sequels make the series and sometimes they really kind of kill it. I'm kind of, I mean, Frosty the Snowman returns in the 90s after the early to mid 60s, whatever. That's the first time again, these people are grown. They don't remember. They don't have the magic. It's not the Sandlot anymore.
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of, not to go dark, not to go sad, but a lot of our Christmas memories, a lot of our Christmas carols, our TV specials, our holiday traditions are really kind of based on and around the darkness that was World War II.
Yeah.
Like I'll Be Home for Christmas and White Christmas and those sorts of songs and that sort of sentimentality is it is not a commercialized Bed Bath and Beyond jingle trying to make you buy stuff. It really, really is human yearning to be at a place where we were warm and safe and happy when we're not necessarily in those places.
Yep.
And so for us who thank God we've never had to be in war and probably not even all that hungry or cold, even though, it gets that way sometimes. We have these memories that we look back upon and be like, okay, well, that's warm, that's home, that's where I would like to be. I would really like to remember that. What about Puff the Magic Dragon? For me, that was always on around Christmas time. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I looked, I didn't find it in the archives, and then I found it obscurely, and they're like, it was always played around, but somewhere between Christmas and Thanksgiving, and
yeah.
But yeah, Puff the Magic Dragon always was.
It was on
even
quite
as
a bit.
Child. It was kind of a tearjerker.
Sure.
Like, poor Puff, man.
Yeah, and I think that was just kind of the way these things went, right? You had to have something to happen, right, to make you care for the characters, and then at the end, everybody just dances and do a song together. That's how these things roll, dude. Santa Claus is coming to town, right? Where he goes and fights the Heat Meister and Heat Miser.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the Heat Miser. I mean. Oh, yeah. I mean,
there's so many of those that, like, because again, they, especially with the stop motion ones, they kind of run together.
Yeah,
you get a little confused because you're like, oh well, was that the scene where they're all standing in the snow? But then you've always got Burl Ives walking around being like, okay, let me tell you a story about Christmas. And it's not we'll talk about it in a couple weeks, but that's the entire intro scene for Elf, where
right.
he's like, hey, Mr. Narwhal, like just all these just kind of random characters popping out of nowhere, just being like, hey, what's going on? I'm just going to be a sideline of the story, but I'm part of it. And yet then they make themselves kind of immortal. There are...
Yeah. I think about that setup, too, about, you get Burl Ives, and he's narrating the story, and he's this kind of holly jolly snowman, right? Sliding around with his cardigan on. And then you get Fred Astaire is doing the Santa Claus story, and he's like a postmaster delivering mail to the North Pole. And then Roger Miller, hey, we got this new one we want to do about a donkey. So, oh, cool. So what I get to be as a narrator? Oh, you get to be a donkey. Oh, well, great. Oh.
So before we drop out of the stop motion, because we did talk about animation, but
yeah.
I think that's one of those things. You mentioned the 90s and their crappy actual animation, because in the 90s they were starting to get lazy with actual animation. And if you look at, it doesn't have to be Disney, but just look at old frame-by-frame animation they used to do. It was expensive, and they'd have to draw, like, every frame.
Yeah.
Like, half it, with eighths of seconds, just slight motion. And then the stop motion was exactly the same thing, just in 3D.
Yeah.
And then you have Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
From 1993, which of course is not a TV special, but it is most certainly hearkening back to those, because there's the discussion about whether it's a Halloween movie versus a Christmas movie, because I think it was released close to Christmas and it was supposed to be a Christmas movie, but it's in the last 20 years it's kind of pulled itself back into the Halloween zone. But regardless,
the influence came from those. Tim Burton was a huge fan of that stop motion style. Yeah.
And the whole Christmas town scenes where he's running around, I mean, it's almost, I mean, you could take one of those scenes and drop it into one of the old shows and it would work.
Yep.
So, you know, the influence of that old stuff is just everywhere.
Sure.
I mean, you don't think about it, you don't see it. Sometimes the young and the old don't mix because the old ain't hip anymore, but
yeah,
it's all there. And
yeah, well, it kind of goes with, just like we were talking about with the Jim Henson stuff, right? I mean, things change, you know, things get better to some degree, but the heart and soul of it is what's important. And that's kind of the same deal with this stuff is, you know, it's going to mean different things to different people because, just like you said, it's tradition, right? Just like singing Away in the Manger is traditional because you grew up, you know, being around your family and singing Silent Night or these songs. It's just a part of that tradition. These shows were that. And, you know, it's no different than seeing the Great Pumpkin, you know, Charlie Brown special let you know that it's Halloween time, you know.
Which brings us to the Charlie Brown Christmas time.
Absolutely. I was hoping you'd segue into that.
I was working on it. I just, you know, like if you're going to follow a show like this, sometimes we empty both barrels in the first half, but we're solid into the second half. And well, you mentioned Star Wars, and I was like, oh, we can't go there yet. So like cue the little holiday special. There's still things to pay attention to.
Oh, yeah.
Don't get lost in the third act here. But yeah, dude, the Charlie Brown Christmas, Great Pumpkin.
Yeah.
You know, the Great Pumpkin.
Yeah.
And the thing about Charlie Brown is there's the Charlie Brown Halloween, great, but then there is the Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Which makes you just really want to reach in and just flick all of those kids in the head. Like the Thanksgiving special. You remember the Thanksgiving special? Everybody just invites themselves to his house, and so he does the best he can to make food for them.
Yeah.
And then they're not happy with it, and he's sorry. I'm like, oh no. I didn't call you. You called me. I did the best I could. So how about everybody just step off the property?
Yeah, just step off.
But then it gets to Christmas time, and it's a whole lot more heartfelt. I mean, Thanksgiving, that's a you have to kind of give that the benefit of the doubt but yeah, Christmas,
right?
It's again, that's home. It's everybody's home, everybody's friends.
Yeah.
He has to read War and Peace, doesn't he? Over Christmas break.
Yeah. Oh.
Nothing says Christmas.
Yeah.
Like Russian tragedy in 1,000 pages.
Well, since you're going to be off for all this time, here you can read this for when we come back. Oh, dude, I forgot to tell you. We actually talk about another special. I just totally forgot about this. And I don't know if I brought this up before, but we actually got to go see Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas in a theater.
Oh, wow.
A couple of years ago. They showed it in Nashville, so we drove 2.5 hours to go watch Emmett Chuck Berry Christmas on the screen. And they had a lost episode of Fraggle Rock that was a Christmas special, and they showed it beforehand. And yeah, it was never aired, and it's like, wow, why would you not show a Christmas special of Fraggle Rock? So I didn't see anything in there that said
Weird.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I totally forgot about that. But they had a unaired episode of Fraggle Rock that was a Christmas special, and that was kind of cool.
Sometimes they just filmed it and then just couldn't get the airtime. That was what we were talking about earlier. It was like, well, we've got a show. The show comes back and say we don't have a slot. So then, like, maybe shopping around. And just saying that there's unaired episodes and stuff. So there's with COVID and the death of retail or the death of different things. I read a couple of days ago that it's the oldest video rental store in Austin that's held on. Like it survived a Blockbuster, it survived everything else. And they finally decided to close. I think the owner decided to retire and just wasn't going to have to deal with it. But they have a massive library of out of print and unreleased and just stuff. They're a huge thing. And I've heard their name many times in the past. And apparently Alamo bought them. Bought not the company, but just bought their inventory, bought their library.
Cool.
And was like, okay, we're just gonna store it over here in this one theater, and then we'll start just playing stuff, having marathons. So that's a good thing, because there is a lot. I mean, we talk about VHS and video and old stuff that was on TV. Like, again, I haven't seen Puff the Magic Dragon in
that's been a while,
probably 30 years.
Yeah.
Or even longer. And I don't know where it is. I'm sure if you go on YouTube, it's there.
Oh,
somebody's going to be like, but no, you don't see it on TV. It's like, it's certainly not a special anymore. It doesn't make you, like, perk up your ears and be like, well, on Tuesday, I'm going to stay home. You know?
So I know we're heading towards the end here, and I'm just going to say it. Do we even bring up the Star Wars Holiday Special?
Well, what I was going to say to segue into that, because you mentioned that, is somewhere along the lines, because I think Star Wars were always holiday movies or summer movies. They were summer releases.
Yeah.
Because Jaws was the first blockbuster, and Lucas and Spielberg were making out in the 70s. So, and so then, you had summer blockbusters, but then at some point, Star Wars became a Christmas tradition. Like some network would be playing Star Wars.
Yeah.
You mentioned the holiday special, and the answer to that question is I can't. But we've got Mandalorian, and Mandalorian is such that we have to, because
man,
the way Mandalorian keeps playing out is I think we're going to have a holiday special redux that sets all things right.
Maybe,
because maybe. But here's the thing. I have a philosophy. I have a thought. So the thing about Star Wars is, God, it pisses me off even having to bring politics into it. It sucks. But do you remember a few years ago when the President Barack Obama said to all these small business owners, well, you didn't build that, because you built that on the shoulders of other people. And all the small business owners were furious because he was an ass. George Lucas didn't build that.
Right.
George Lucas wrote that, and he had some really great ideas for direction. But if it wasn't for John Williams,
Absolutely. Yep.
Spielberg, if it wasn't for even Harrison Ford being like, I'm not saying that.
Right.
Like there was a whole lot of things that happened in spite of Lucas's genius that made Star Wars what it was.
The whole ILM stuff, man. I mean, if you didn't have the ILM original crew involved and the sound design, all that stuff, I mean, yeah, it was Lucas's, brainchild, but he did exactly what Tarantino does, right? He takes favorite things of different things and mashes it together. I mean, Star Wars is dogfights of World War II. You're fighting, stormtroopers, Darth Vader. It's and we're not downplaying it because we love Star Wars, but at the same time,
we love it.
He's also
had just as many bad ideas as good.
Just look at the prequels, right?
and sometimes people have to talk him off a ledge, and sometimes he won't let himself be talked off a ledge.
Right.
I think that with Star Wars Holiday Special, he's like, well, if I'm on my way to being the greatest, I also have to be the worst. Like, I have to land on both sides. Like if there's a heartbeat, boom, I'm here and here at the same time. Like I'm good and I suck all at once. Because that's the only explanation. Because, dude.
Apparently, he didn't have much to do with the holiday special.
He had to have. Unless it was just contracts and people saying, well, then I'll show up.
Well, I think
anybody with any sense would have decided that this is a bad idea from the beginning.
Well, and that's the thing about it. He even tried to have all the copies of it destroyed. So, I mean, he did. He literally wanted to do like they did with the original Nosferatu, yeah. And he literally was wanting all of it destroyed. And the fact that it's out there on YouTube where you can watch it is pretty wild because they thought they got them all.
Dude,
it's the weirdest thing. Watching. If you folks listening, if you've never seen the Star Wars holiday special. I'd say go check it out. It's on YouTube. You can check it out. But it is the weirdest. It is the weirdest thing I think I've ever seen.
And like I said, with the thing with Lucas is whether or not he actually wrote it or directed it or
I think he had
he greenlit it. He certainly let it happen.
Yeah.
Because here's how I know this. Here's how I know this. There is a little band of sisters out of Tyler, Texas, and the name of the band is Isley. And they play alternative rock and roll. It's three sisters, and they sing harmonies, and they sound like angels. They started their band under the name Moss Isley.
Yeah.
And before they made $4 for a cover charge, they were hit by Lucasfilm with a cease and desist for using property.
Wow.
And so, yeah, the holiday special.
But this is, what year was this? Was this in the 90s?
It was in the 90s.
Well, see,
but still.
Star Wars, I mean, you got to remember, this is right after the very first movie. So Lucas had the rights to the toys. So the rest of it belonged to Fox, right? 20th Century Fox. So I don't know, man. I mean, I don't. He had to have consented in some way. I kind of look at it like I do the Kiss movie, right? Hey,
it was there.
Hanna-Barbera wants to make a movie with Kiss in it, and they want it to be like Star Wars meets A Hard Day's Night, and it's anything but that, right? So, hey George, we want to take some of the original cast members and do a holiday special. Yeah, okay, go ahead. Who you got in? We're gonna have Harvey Korman in. Oh, yeah, I love Harvey Korman. Go ahead. And then he sees it and goes, "What did y'all do?"
Dude, It really does. It is quite painful. It really is. I mean, it's heartbreakingly painful.
The fact that Chewbacca's grandfather gets in that booth and is basically like, I don't know, a porn station that he's sitting in. It's like a virtual reality where he's getting all hot and bothered by, I don't know who it was, Lena Horne or somebody. It's like, wow, this is the weirdest thing ever. And then Jefferson and Starship comes out and plays a song. It's just like, what?
Yeah, it's Princess Leia is singing songs.
Oh, that song
to
at the
children.
A Time for Peace.
It is not good, guys. It is not good.
No, it's not.
Don't. Go watch The Mandalorian though, because The Mandalorian rocks,
man.
And I honestly, dude, you were talking. We have been talking about Emmett Otter. We've been talking about Jim Henson, the puppets and the Muppets. I posted on Facebook a couple weeks ago how it's amazing how a guy without a face,
yep,
and a puppet that doesn't talk,
yep,
just completely snows two multi-huge film franchises. But yeah. I think Favreau has it right, and I think it's funny because what's his Paoli, the other guy, those two guys seem to me like Favreau had it right with Iron Man and the Avengers. He had it right.
Yep.
Was don't F with it. Just don't mess with it. The characters are right. Yep. Just make them look good and give them cool lines to say. Because to me, Mandalorian is it's the new, I have to sit there and watch it. Mm-hmm. My kids, my younger daughter, she doesn't like Star Wars, but she loves Mandalorian.
Man.
Okay. Baby Yoda.
Oh, yeah.
1.5 seasons of having not said a single word. And he is more compelling than most of the characters in any of the prequels or sequel series.
Yep.
Right? And the fact that they didn't go CGI, and the fact that they did use puppets.
Yeah.
Now, I'm used to being disappointed, so like they might come out with a holiday special next week where Mando's dancing around or something, and I'll be like, well,
it
was good while it lasted. But at least it's been good while it lasts, because I've been having a really good time with it.
Yeah, man, fantastic. It's all going to come to a head, though. The last episode, they'll reintroduce Jar Jar Binks or something. It's just like, oh.
The thing is, though, here's in Favreau's hands.
Yeah,
I trust it
absolutely,
because he reintroduces Jar Jar Binks, and he comes in and he's like, I messed up. Like, maybe he's got some armor or a robot hand, and he's like doing the whole Winter Soldier thing. He's like, man, I messed up, and I've got to fix things. Like, maybe that will work. I don't know.
He's on a roll, man. This last episode was amazing.
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm down. Well, man, I think that has about run us out of time.
Yeah, it has.
We spent the last few minutes talking about the Star Wars, but the dude, even with the commercials, I mean, this is one of those reasons why going back and watching the first Star Wars, the proper Star Wars, the 1977 Star Wars, I'm not going to call it Episode 4 because...
Yeah, I agree.
Like, it can get boring somewhere between the second and the third act because there's too many commercials when they're trying to fill that time in that slot.
Yeah.
And then whenever you actually sit down and watch it, the commercials aren't there, so it just kind of plays through, and you're like, wait, this isn't boring at all.
Yeah.
It's a 3-hour presentation on a 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
Because that's
how they make their money.
Commercials.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was things like, I'm watching Star Wars. You watch Star Wars all the time. I'm watching it again, Mom.
So, I grew up watching, when Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer would come on, you'd always get that commercial where it was the let's see, what was it back then? Bell South commercial, where the family's calling the grandpa, and it's long distance. We're calling all the way from Wisconsin. Can you hear us? Yeah, sounds great. Have a good holiday. I mean, it was one of those staple commercials that was on every year at Christmas time. You can call long distance. You know, it was the start of all that, right?
For me, it was that Folgers commercial where the kid shows up home from college or whatever.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Car full of presents.
Yep.
And, like, his little sister wakes up, and she's like, you're home. And, like, as a grown-up, I'm like, okay, so is he coming home from college? Because he's got a car full of presents. What is he doing? Like, he's
selling drugs on the side or something.
Somewhere. Like, he's got money. Like, but, nah, I mean, like, no, and I don't even mean that really cynically. I'm like, dude, what is he doing for a living? Because he's making something. He's got a car full of presents, and he's home.
He's a college kid, and he's bought presents. Something wrong here.
Not good. It's like those boxes are not full of laundry. Like, Merry Christmas, Mom. Right. Like, pull open the end and, like, dump it in the laundry. All right, man. Let's go ahead and close this one down, and we will see you guys next week. We love you. If you don't hear us next week, Merry Christmas. Keep it awesome.